Yeah. The Argent Squire was a mainstay of a lot of Shaman decks. Back before the introduction of Goblin versus Gnomes, when the sort of mech Shaman became the really go-to sort of aggressive style, or the introduction of Zombie Chow back at Naxxramas. It works very well with the buffs like Flame Tongue Totem or Goblin, not Goblin, Rockbiter Weapon.
Yeah,
that's where I was going.
Yeah, of course. I knew exactly what you meant, Kibler.
I mean, speaking of the Flame Tongue Totem, I mean, ElkY got the perfect curve here from 1 to 4 within 4 cards, so that's the best you can have. And if he only rolls like a Flame Tongue Totem out of the Tusker, then like it will go like really well. Like, otherwise, it doesn't still have like the defender for the egg, right?
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. The positioning will be important too. You want to slide the Tuskar, between unions or minions that you want to have that adjacent buffs. For now, though, the Hunter's plan is very similar. In fact, the Hunter hero power, as famously said by Killer multiple times, is one of the natural enemies against Shaman, which traditionally struggles to heal a lot. So if the game gets out of control and Daniel's piling up a lot of pressure with Hunter, then it doesn't even matter what Shaman does on board, it just kills.
So we do see ElkY pick up that Bloodlust. Oh, wow. That is the dream scenario with Tuskar Totemic, getting a free 3/4 Totem Golem that really allows him to stabilize his board position.
Pimpingo would have needed that before.
Get in there!
Yeah. The Searing Totems that he got every time, not quite as good.
All right, well, I mean, this is one of those cases where can you even bother fighting back on board, or just going to be more aggressive?
Looks like Daniel embraces the spirit of Rexxar and goes straight to the face. But ElkY, he has that Defender of Argus that's going to put him in an excellent position against Daniel's board.
The Defender is so big here. You're going to force the Hunter to go through some high health minions, which spawn even bigger ones with the Nerubian after the Nerubian egg. Then you can pick up some pretty good trades as well, making sure that you also can go on the offensive against Hunter.
Yeah, there's some interesting decision making here with the Defender, where exactly you want to choose it, because if you do buff the egg here, it obviously allows you to potentially make a Nerubian, but it also makes your board significantly weaker to silence, because it's a much stronger play against that specific minion.
True. True. However, it does force your opponent to go through the Nerubian egg, which is what you want. Otherwise, you're going to be reliant on the Rockbiter weapon to pop it.
Or Bloodlust.
Or Bloodlust.
So Bloodlust is generally going straight to the opponent's face.
That's the plan. I mean, just having 5 minions on board is half their life. All right, so ElkY trades the Divine Shield in and just starts going pretty aggressive because he has that Bloodlust.
Yeah, I mean, it's simply lethal next turn, right? So
it is if Daniel doesn't stop it. I mean, his Animal Companion is a Misha, which
that's not
falls
good
on
enough.
Some.
No, this is not going to be good enough. That Bloodlust will punch through a lot of damage.
Uh-oh, especially if he's going to load up with more power onto the board. I don't even think Daniel's expecting Bloodlust, though.
No one really expects Bloodlust.
How common is this on ladder these days?
Not common at all. You rarely see Bloodlust, though I imagine there may have been a few more Bloodlust casts in the past few weeks after Pimping Ho made his way here, but this is going to do it. ElkY comes through. We see a smile on both the players' face as a huge chunk of damage closes out game 1.
Ooh, full damage, max and BM. ElkY starting off really strong with an unexpected win. Shaman over the Hunter. Not something that you are expecting to see these days.
Yeah, not at all. Shaman is usually a class that tends to struggle quite a bit, but that Defender of Argus and the Totem Golem coming off the Tuskar Totemic were huge board presence for him in that game.
That's right. That is ElkY's significant other cheering him on in a Jaina costume.
That's just Jaina? I thought that was Jaina. She looks just like Jaina.
Yeah, so it's just like Jaina, and that's a really good sounding board, at least to cheer for you in the background there next to Hamilton Chu. To anybody tuning in, you're in the middle of watching the Daniel Negreanu versus ElkY show match. We're halfway through our quarterfinals, after which we'll be playing Challenge Stone matches featuring me, Kibler, and a few other people. This is while we get ready for the second half of the quarterfinals, which will be happening later today.
Yeah, we have 2 players who have moved through to the semifinals already. Your teammate, Tice, as well as Osaka. Excellent European representation so far.
That's really cool. I mean, a little bit unfortunate that all the Europeans got like stuffed in the top 8 of the rooster. So they now have to like, fight each other. But what can you do about it, right? I mean, we are happy enough that 2 of the Europeans made it to the semifinals and now have a chance to like that at least one European will actually represent Europe in the finals. So that's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's right. Last year, no European got to the semifinals. They all got stopped in the top 8. Most notably, Colento dropped in the top 8 there. People expecting him to go really far. Well, in game number 2, we're going to see Mage versus Mage.
They're very different Mage decks from the look of these opening
It could be very different outcomes with how it pans out here.
So as we saw in the opening, Daniel said he has gotten his golden Mage portrait, and he did so primarily, I believe, through playing a Tempo Mage style of deck. So this is likely the deck with which he is the most comfortable.
All right, well, let's listen in on what they're saying. I hear there's some banter back and forth.
Wanted, dead or alive.
There you go. My gift to you. Nothing good? No? That's good.
All right, so after that riveting back and forth diatribe between these two players, it's like the intensity is back up. I mean, there's a lot of tension inside of that room. Can you feel it? ElkY's with deep breaths. I thought he was the one who was the most calm and collected.
Yeah, he was definitely perhaps feeling the pressure here. He is up 1 game in this match so far, but this is definitely where Daniel is in his comfort zone. And this Explosive Sheep is the best possible response to that mirror entity. Allows him to not only deal with the secret, but also wipe Daniel's entire board.
That's right. And as the mage in Daniel's shoes, you want to be as aggressive as you can onto the board. So losing everything like that was really painful.
Absolutely. And Gormak the Impaler doesn't have friends to trigger his battle cry, but does come down as a cheap 4-power minion here, which gives Daniel a bit of a reload on the board.
Yeah, you know, Gormak kind of come in like a Costco package. You need to have a bundle of minions in order for Gormak to get some value. At stock price, it's not very powerful. It's just a 4/4 for 4.
This is perhaps an opportunity for Daniel to use the explosive shot he picked up, though he could also use Flame Cannon Ping. I would imagine we may see the explosive shot because it's a little bit more efficient overall. But nope, the Flame Cannon able to take down the Belcher, but ElkY, I believe, has a duplicate hiding.
Which
that's
will
going to be
give him full hand too, by the way, but that's still okay. You have so many good cards in your hand that I think you don't mind what you burn next, unless it's Alex Strasler.
Daniel did want ElkY to dress up like a Sludge Belcher, so he wants him to have a bunch of Sludge Belchers, so he knows exactly what he's
The
doing.
Molten Giant just got burned. Did you see it?
That's big, yeah.
That's super huge.
Yeah, the element of surprise is gone too, by the way. So now he knows, like, oh, wait, it's not like Freeze Mage or anything really weird. It's Sludge Belcher already set like a couple of alarms off, but you start seeing that Molten Giant, you know exactly what you're facing.
Yeah. So Daniel now, he's aware that he needs to be careful with how he manages ElkY's life total. If there is another Molten Giant waiting in his hand, perhaps Echo of Medivh is a card he starts thinking about that as a possibility. But that explosive shot will clear out the second Sludge Belcher, and then we actually see some big damage coming in from Daniel here, getting ElkY down to just 14 with 2 fireballs in hand.
If ElkY plays like Flame Strike or something, he dies immediately, right?
Yeah, he needs to both defend himself against the minions and do something to prepare to defend his life total as well, because he's so low.
Yeah, that's right. It's a really good point that if he flame strikes and clears the board, if something with 2 attack or more falls out, he dies.
Yeah.
Which is very common to see. Not to mention that even if he does survive, What if he gets to the point where his opponent can simply weather him down through damage and then kill him with hero powers over turns? There's no heal in ElkY's hand right now.
I mean, ElkY is really looking to find something.
Oh, here it is.
This
Yeah.
might
This
be.
is-
Oh, it's a 2-attack minion. That's perfect and just enough damage for Daniel to end this game.
You see him point, aim and click there against ElkY, and there comes Fireball number 1, Fireball number 2, and that's 14 damage, going to tie up the series 1-2-1.
That's right. So Daniel Negreanu with the fist pump, putting himself on the board. Looks
This
like
was probably like the fastest Echo Giant mage game I ever saw. Like without Echo Giant, right? I think so.
Well, he did have one Molten Giant possibly drawn, but there's two things to this. First, Daniel gets an important win to tie up the series. The second is that he knows what kind of mage deck this is going for, so the surprise element's also out of the way.
And that's often one of the powerful elements of the deck like Echo Giants is can play like a different style of deck and then sort of spring the trap on you of, oh, okay,
Yes.
here come the Molten Giants.
Yeah, so that's no longer available at ElkY's disposal, but maybe matchup-wise, he's still in a pretty decent spot. Or so you think until you look at the classes remaining from Daniel, which is Druid and Hunter. And those are two classes which can be very tricky for the Echo Mage to engage with.
Yeah, exactly what you said. I mean, I don't know exactly about the matchup against the Hunter, but against Druid, it's horrible. Like, it's really bad. Like,
Yeah.
if like the Druid player executes his game play correctly, then Echo Mage shouldn't have like a chance in that match. So it's really important, like for ElkY, that he chooses his Echo Mage into the Hunter, if possible.
So how do you feel after watching one game apiece from both these guys here? What's your reading? Are they playing to your satisfaction, Life Coach?
Yeah, well, so Daniel brought like face hunter in the first game, right? So that was actually, I mean, he went face, so that was probably already quite well executed. Yeah.
Probably right. Yeah, well, the Life Coach is like, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, that's kind of what we normally come to expect from those Hunter decks, really aggressive stuff. So it looks like Daniel at least gets the sense of what Rexar is meant to do.
I mean, Daniel did pick up a win with his Mage deck, and that is the deck with which he is the most experienced.
True.
He does have his Golden Mage portrait, so we'll see how well he navigates the games of the other class as well.
Okay, well, this is another important win for ElkY to get with his Mage deck. If it can withstand the Hunter pressure, it can dodge the Druid, and the winner of this will be at a very big advantage for the remainder of the series, because then they'll be one game away from closing it out.
Mm-hmm. And the Molten Giant in ElkY's hand is a very strong one against an aggressive deck. He's very likely to get his health reduced quite low by the Hunter, so he's able to get this discount Giant.
Did Daniel just not coin out, did he really not coin out the Knife Juggler?
Looks like he chose not to.
It looks like he's saving the coin because he
For better
rather
times.
use it for something. But in this case, when he had two jugglers in hand, you'd want to put as much pressure as you want, ideally, correct?
It looks like he may be going to coin out the Argent Horse Rider.
Don't worry, love.
So it looks like he wants to play the minion that has the Divine Shield, which gives it a little bit more resilience against possible removal. Though it does force him to use his mana somewhat inefficiently over the next couple of turns. Ooh.
Okay, well, let's listen in again and see if these guys are exchanging any words for game number 3.
Let's throw a Knife Juggler your way, my friend. Here you go.
Put this apple on your head.
Get in there and fight, maggot.
Boom, boom. Okay. I know you got that sheep thing. You can play that sheep thing? What is that sheep thing called? I know what you're thinking.
I will hunt you down.
I love that you can do that. Threaten. Heavy breathing. That's good for me.
What to do? What to do?
Duplicate.
One person's talking, at least. Looks like Daniel Negreanu is in the zone,
Yeah,
making reads on ElkY.
That sheep thing, unfortunately for ElkY, not in his hand, but
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where he's like, yeah, play it. I know you have it. He doesn't have it because obviously he would try playing it to reduce the pressure. I mean, so Daniel's gathering some information, trying to use some of those old man tricks here.
Daniel in a pretty good spot here with a lot of aggression, though ElkY does have that ice block down as well as Molten Giant. So he could be in a spot where he gets to start playing gigantic minions, but he doesn't have any heal. So if his ice block is popped, there's that sheep thing. Nice draw for ElkY there. We see a little bit of dance on Daniel's side. Yeah,
he won't be dancing for really long, though, if the explosive sheep clears the board. Well, it won't clear it entirely because of the Divine Shield.
Yeah. The Argent Strider does survive. No damage from the Divine Shield preventing it. ElkY down to 15.
Huh. Well,
without heal it will get pretty close, actually. Like, I mean, he cannot, like, proc the block this turn, but if he can actually proc the block next turn, I mean, he doesn't die within the next 3 turns, does he?
It doesn't look like it. ElkY would have to drop 3 or 4 giants worth in order to kill him. And in order to do that, he has to make sure his ice block is not popped either on the following turn.
So ElkY can potentially this turn play Molten Giant, Sun Fury, or the Sludge Belcher, but he could play Molten Giant, Sun Fury, and Echo, which allowed him to play another giant, but he'd only have the 1 taunt still. And still, no way to gain life in ElkY's hands. So even if he does get a good board full of taunt minions, it's unlikely he can survive if ElkY's able to pop his block.
Yeah, I mean, ElkY has to top deck. Like, if he doesn't top deck, then it's over, basically.
But the thing is, he's limited with what he can draw, too, because Alexstrasza would be too expensive the following turn.
Right.
So he would need to get the heal bot or a second ice block to stay alive.
What's also really interesting is that, I mean, ElkY can actually produce 4 taunted Molten Giants, but he cannot save himself, yeah, so that's... I mean, it's not about the board here, but...
All right, so ElkY chooses to go for the most taunts possible, but that doesn't matter because Daniel can still burn through it. Trying to wave over to nervously pass the turn, but Daniel is determined to pop the ice block this turn.
And we do see both copies of Kill Command in Daniel's hand. He can fire one off at ElkY's face, uses hero power, pop the ice block at 2, and ElkY's going to need to find some form of heal in order to survive, despite having an army of Molten Giants with taunt. He could also potentially find a second copy of Ice Block that could buy him enough time, because he's actually going to be able to attack for 18 damage this turn.
Yeah, that's primarily it. And even if he got like Scientist, for example, that wouldn't be enough. Lotheb.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. Lotheb not able to do it, though. He still needs to heal. Even just the hero power kills him.
Yeah, the hero power goes past every single taunt here. And ElkY's caught in a classic struggle against hero power versus what else he can do.
If he were just at 3 life, he would actually potentially be able to win this game with that Lotheb, but he is just 1 too few life, and he's going to put out a absolute army of giants, but they cannot stop Steady Shot.
He's he's going to really hope for some user error on Daniel's side. Think maybe he'll forget the hero power, but I don't think that's the case at all.
And ElkY concedes. Daniel Negreanu is going to go up to a 2-1 lead over ElkY.
And that's definitely really good for Daniel. You know, he never hit Legend. He's only hit rank 5. Due to, I guess, time constraints and plus, newness to the game. But ElkY, he's hit Legend multiple times, so he comes in here as a player trying to defend his honor, making sure that he can live up to his reputation.
Yeah, and he did have, a deck there that struggled quite a bit with what Daniel was playing there. He needed to find, something more to actually regain his life there. Perhaps if he had found a heal bot, things might have been a little bit different. But as it stands, Daniel is 1 game away from winning this exhibition match.
Yeah, I think it's really dangerous again because this Druid still remains, and so the Druid goes up against the Mage. That'll be really tricky, and we don't even know what Warlock it is either. If he chose Handlock, then he's in really big trouble because the Druid will put a lot of pressure on both these classes.
I hope it's Dreadsteed.
Dreadsteed Warlock, that's pretty awesome. Have you got a chance to play Dreadsteed Warlock at all, Life Coach?
Which one?
A Dreadsteed type Warlock.
The Dreadsteed. Oh yeah. No, actually, like. I think it's so bad that I didn't even try it.
Oh, how do you know it's bad if you haven't even tried it? Because you played against it a couple times.
No, I mean, there are decks and decks, so some decks they are with weird cards, and sometimes it could be a thing, so perhaps you have to try it first.
Sure,
for example, with this stuff which gives you like 10 mana. What is it?
Astral
Communion.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the communion. Yeah, I tested that, and like after 5 games, I found this not being like anywhere good. But like stuff like Dreadsteed, I don't think you need to waste your time to test stuff like that.
All right, well, Harsh words from Life Coach to all the Dreadsteed fan players there, but don't worry, his time will come. In the meantime, game number 4 is about to begin. One more time, we'll try and see if ElkY's mage can turn around, but if he drops to the Druid, that is it.
Ooh, Daniel with some interesting cards in his opening hand. ElkY, a powerful late game threat, but not necessarily what you're looking for here. Here, I think Daniel's looking to pressure ElkY as quickly as possible.
It's not just any Kel'Thuzad, it's golden Kel'Thuzad.
Oh, yeah.
So you had to craft it manually from the adventure set.
Do you think this is perhaps the reason why we see him in the deck?
Maybe. Yeah,
He's so shiny.
It is pretty amazing if you have it synergized with some taunt minions that just keep coming back, like Sludge Belcher, for example.
Speaking of taunt minions, that's a giant hand of taunts from Daniel. He chooses to innervate out that Sludge Belcher, though he does have pretty much nothing but expensive minions left in his hand. Gonna give ElkY quite a bit of time.
Yeah, ElkY would love the amount of time that he could have. Echo Mage is one of the best at winning long games of attrition. And the reason why we were saying Druid was a big threat to this type of mage deck was because the normal Druid, which is very fast, that has 2 versions of Force of Nature Savage Roar, they're always threatening to potentially just pop your Ice Block, and you don't have the way to catch up against them on the board the way you would like to before you die.
Well, actually, it's like already enough if you only place 1 combo, because like the Echo Mage doesn't have any tools without the Giants to ever outvalue the Druid, which means like if the Druid simply let the Mage stay at 21 life, he can never drop anything, which is basically also the key to this matchup. I mean, I don't know whether Daniel knows, but it's like if you simply let the Mage above 21, it's unlosable.
Sure, that's also a good point, because then Molten Giants and duplicates and all those echoes don't actually happen on the Molten Giants themselves.
Daniel has seen ElkY play this deck twice now, so he is certainly aware at least of the presence of Molten Giant in the deck. So we'll see if he does make the sort of play adjustments in order to play around that possibility.
All right, well, the Doomsayer to preemptively address the board, both on this turn and the next one for Druid. And he does pick up Keep at the Grove. Is this a time where he can afford to let that slide, or do you think it's more important that he preserves his board right now?
It's kind of an interesting spot. He does have just a fairly weak board. It could save this for a future Doomsayer, could potentially save this for a taunted Giant, for instance. But he does choose to silence the Doomsayer and ensure that the end is not, in fact, coming.
No, and that's really good, because the Druid needs to keep this momentum. Even if it doesn't have the Force of Nature Savage Roar, you can threaten it against your opponent to make them really scared.
One interesting thing about silencing a Doomsayer in this matchup, because ElkY is playing with Echo of Medivh, he can possibly just reload a second Doomsayer off a copy of Echo of Medivh, despite the minion in play not actually having any abilities.
That is true. And it's not like you can kill off a Doomsayer anytime soon, right?
Yeah. I mean, it would cost Daniel 7 damage in order to do that, but he decides to just send 6 damage to ElkY's face.
He's not afraid.
No, not at all.
Because he does have the big game hunter, so maybe he feels like he can deal with one of the Giants.
So this is ElkY in an interesting position here. He's facing down quite a powerful board without really all that many strong plays of his own this turn.
Yeah, that's right. This is, I mean, it feels like it's okay if he plays slightly defensively. He still has to figure out ways that you would win, because one of the drawbacks of playing Heal Buff, for example, is if you're that much farther away from Molten Giants, but you do want to inevitably be a threat. And he also coins and hero powers, so that way, in case his opponent dealt with the board already, with Swipe and Hero Power, for example, he could Flame Strike the next set of minions down.
He does have that Flame Strike waiting, but Daniel has a variety of minions that he can choose to play, none of which are particularly vulnerable to that Flame Strike.
No, Ancient of War is one of the most resilient minions in the game against Flame Strike.
He is quite large. Ancient of War. Uproot? No, I'm disappointed.
It would survive a Flame Strike.
It would? It would.
Back over to Team ElkY here. I mean, has this developed enough where maybe he can start swinging back the game, or do you think Druid still has too much initiative, Life Coach?
I mean, it's an interesting point, right? I mean, the Druid is also a little bit like with Kel'Thuzad, things are changing. So, what is with the polymorph? Do you think he will polymorph the 5/10 taunt? I mean, it's juicy, right, to do that. But if he does it, then if he cannot also handle Kel'Thuzad, he will probably pose quite a threat.
That's right. he'll never be able to get to kill the Zod because the Sludge Belcher will keep spawning slimes, and not to mention it'll keep coming back.
So ElkY it has a lot that he has to deal with right now, and the threat of Kel'Thuzad looming in Daniel's hands certainly does not make it easier. ElkY doesn't know that he's going to have to deal with that, and uses his Polymorph to take down the Ancient of War. As Life Coach said, a very juicy target. Daniel applauding.
I believe he's applauding himself for forcing his opponent to play exactly the way he wanted to. He's like, yes, you polymorph that, and not something else. Like my Kel'Thuzad coming down, ElkY can't deal with it. And that is going to be problematic, to say the least.
And yeah, ElkY now needs to... Ooh, he does fight Frost Nova, but no Doomsayer.
ElkY is like, not like this, please. Not like this.
Well, let's actually hear if ElkY has anything to say. He's been relatively quiet. Maybe he has got a few words for Daniel.
Oh, so sick. So far, I like the way things are going right now.
I'll show them. I'll show them all.
But ElkY always has tricky plans. Hey! Not very nice. Let's see.
Of Medivh into Frost Nova and Doomsayer. Like everything. And as we see, like, there wouldn't have been a handle. But okay, this is because we see the hand, but I think perhaps in those situations you have simply to hope for the best. Oh, we see a 5-2, what is it? What is it called?
That is a Druid of Flame.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like a lion.
It's a card that we saw before. As it looks like it's a card that used to be used as a 2/5 minion to try to handle some aggro, but he's using it here very aggressively as a 5/2.
Yeah.
It looks like that it would have charged, but it simply doesn't. So.
It looks like it does a lot of damage to my face, which I don't like. It's also stat for stat equivalent to an Ice Rager.
It is. It is the...
Oh, is it, by the way, already nearly over?
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's going to be tough for ElkY to come back here. He has that second Doomsayer that he just found, but no way to freeze Daniel's board right now.
No, I think it's simply over, right?
Right, because it's not Ice Block, and any minion that he kills actually comes back because of Kel'Thuzad. Because like he can't actually deal with this legendary minion, which keeps spawning other ones.
Didn't find a
there's also
secret, so this very well could be Ice Block here.
Okay.
So may not quite be over for ElkY, but he's definitely on the ropes.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel will have to make sure that he makes the right play, but even if he played it really safe, it's still the question, wondering, like, can ElkY deal with this Kel'Thuzad?
So we do see Duplicate giving a couple more copies of Doomsayer to ElkY, but he does not look like he is likely to have the time to use them.
Now let's pick up another Frost Nova, in which case that would potentially flip this game upside down with the Echo and Frost Nova Molten combinations.
If he is able to find something like Frost Nova, perhaps a Blizzard, some way really to just keep Daniel's minions at bay.
It would have been nice, like, to sacrifice the Sludge Belcher, perhaps, because, like, if you sacrifice Sludge Belcher, you would have get an exact same copy and another minion. So
There's Frost Nova. Oh, ElkY finding exactly what he needs. He can actually play the Molten Giant, Echo, Nova, Doomsayer, or rather, Molten Giant, Doomsayer, Nova, Echo.
You could, if you really feel like you just want to cash in onto the board and really get as many cards as possible. The one thing that I was counting was making sure that he didn't overdraw.
Oh, it looks like he might do just that. Well, this does make it so that if Daniel has a silence effect, that it's more likely he's able to actually ensure that the board does get wiped.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's going to Echo this board, and that's a lot of Doomsayers if he's going to commit to this.
I think he wants he actually can't Echo and Nova. He actually is out of he doesn't have quite enough mana.
Oh yeah, you're right. That was probably a consideration as well. He's going to drop one more Doomsayer just to see if he can permanently wipe this board off the face of the planet. And the way the Doomsayers trigger is that the slimes will be remaining after they die anyways.
Does he overdraw, by the way, if he doesn't drop the Doomsayer?
I
think
believe he has
it's an
10
overdraw.
cards in his hand.
I believe you are correct as well. I'm counting. There should be 10 cards.
So I believe Daniel actually has the damage to remove both of these Doomsayers and break the ice block fairly easily here.
That's right, and that's really big because then you still have the option of keeping your board, and you're not worried about your opponent like Alex Straussing you back up.
So ElkY's ice block is broken.
Uh-oh. Well, I mean, I think Daniel is on the verge of securing his victory. The only thing is he doesn't have direct damage from the hand, but I don't know if he necessarily needs it because outside of this one Frost Nova, how do you stall another turn against this kind of board?
I mean, he does have the Frost Nova. He could Frost Nova potentially with the Doomsayer this turn. Potentially even play, and with Daniel playing the Ancient of Lore, he actually can't play a potential Keeper of the Grove or something to silence a Doomsayer.
My hand is too full.
Oh, burns Molten Giant. That's got to hurt for ElkY here. He knows that this Molten Giant in his hand is the last one he will have besides ones that might get echoed or duplicated. But he's able to get this Doomsayer down, and I think Kel'Thuzad may finally die next turn.
Daniel could just draw 4 damage from the hand in a swipe and end this game, but he
drops the
does
heal
end up
bot,
dropping the heal bot.
Keep himself at a right. We see Daniel laughing. He's like, oh, I can't even do anything.
That's right. Although the problem still remains is he can't necessarily kill KT just yet.
Well, Kel'Thuzad will die to the Doomsayer.
Oh, you're correct. I'm sorry about I just completely forgot about the Doomsayer being played on board.
So everything dies except for these 2 slimes. And now, suddenly the game is back to being a bit less one-sided. ElkY potentially able to drop this Giant, maybe pair it with Duplicate to give him, or even the Echo to give him some additional possible threats.
Yeah, and with the ability to at least echo one of the Giants, he still has a lot of firepower because Daniel used one of his big game hunters. I'm not sure if he runs 2.
Yeah, Daniel's deck a little hard to guess what we might see next. He's playing a very taunt-heavy defensive Druid deck, not really akin to the ones that most of the players are playing in the World Championship.
ElkY
The
doesn't look
secrets,
very
by the way,
happy.
out already? Like, there are no secrets in the deck left? Or what do you think? Like, because of the Mad Scientist? Like all secrets has been drawn already out. So I'm just wondering like what ElkY's hand is consisting out of. It's like 1 Molten, 1 Alex. But if Daniel simply handles those threats, which he can probably do, especially with his high damage composition or with his high curved druid, then ElkY would simply run out of cards, right?
It's entirely possible.
It's true. It is interesting that ElkY also chose to play Alex Strauza without playing his own Molten beforehand.
Yeah, he had the opportunity to play the Molten for 1 mana and then Alex Strauza himself.
I think if he wants to surprise his opponent, then it definitely will be off of Daniel's mind because that was an opportunity to play the Molten.
The Molten Giant was actually from Echo of Medivh, so
right.
I believe that Daniel should have full knowledge of the fact that it is in ElkY's hand.
Okay, well,
I think the plan is like that ElkY realizes that his deck doesn't have enough value to be Druid at all, so he takes the gamble and tries to Echo of Medivh the Molten Giant later, in combination with other cards. But I mean, once like he could of course perhaps like Echo the Doomsayer, but that's of no value, or the Mad Scientist, but he's also of no value. I mean we talked about that, right?
So Flame Strike clears Daniel's board, gives a little bit of a respite to ElkY with the Zombie Chow Death Rattle, bringing him back up to 18 life. He did have to play that Molten Giant first, or else the cost of the Molten Giant would have been increased as his life went up.
well, now Daniel has an opportunity to remove the Alex Strauza pretty easily with that cheap Wrath.
Yeah, and it's zero where like ElkY cannot do anything against it, right? Or does he? I don't think he has a handle. So Izero will at least take 2 turns on the board, which is really, really huge.
Yeah, and another thing too is that ElkY used both of his Moltens up, which means that he's running a little bit low on the threat side outside of this Emperor, and maybe he has like a Sylvanas in his deck as well.
So this Sylvanas also really threatening against the Molten Giant. If Daniel is able to steal Molten Giant, will make life quite difficult for ElkY. And it's also just a threat that he needs to try and deal with as well.
Well, Healbot draws for ElkY just makes him further away from the combination of Force Nature Savage Roar if that's exactly what Daniel is holding. So at least ElkY has that as a sanctity of mind. Say looking at here though, he can maybe try to set up that the Giant will get as much value as possible, setting up for an Echo perhaps. But is he afraid of dying to his opponent's burst pop potential, which he might even question now that he's seen Kale the Zod and Ancient of Wars and Senjin Shieldmaster?
Yeah, it's also funny with the Thaurissan because of the Sylvanas, ElkY can actually not play Thaurissan and Echo of Medivh. So it basically blocks in his turn too, which is quite huge.
He can potentially play perhaps Healbot, maybe Doomsayer, and then attack into the Sylvanas, give him a couple of things that are fairly weak. But no, he's just going to give him the Giant and then shoot it down with his own BG.
And then play Emperor Thaurissan, try to use whatever he has. Oh, he's afraid of dying potentially to a Force Nature Savage Roar, so instead he goes for the Healbot.
Ysera still would stay 2 turns, so...
Yeah, Ysera is still very problematic, considering that ElkY already used one of his polymorphs, and Daniel would have Ysera just gathering cards.
Looks like Daniel is debating if he wants to attack one of the minions. He wants to perhaps play the Zombie Chow into this board. He does have 2 mana left over thanks to the cost reduction on that Ysera.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, like, yeah, I mean, the Zombie Chow has to come down at some point, right? I mean, we saw him staying in the hand for the for the last few turns. But I guess on the board, he's simply stronger than in the hand.
And then Ysera picks up Dream. Not really the strongest thing for Daniel here, though it can potentially allow him to answer some large minion without having to sacrifice any of his board for at least a turn.
Yeah, but this is a really powerful Echo of Medivh, because you're going to reduce all of those cards cost by 1 from the Emperor Thaurissan itself.
So there is still a secret in ElkY's deck, perhaps the 2nd copy of Ice Block.
Yes, most likely there. And he is going to go up to 30 health, and Druid, without the Force Nature Savage Roar, is going to be struggling to put the final points of damage on. So, even though he does have Ysera on the board, does Daniel have enough to close this game out?
I think ElkY will simply run out of cards eventually. As we saw, like, the duplicated cards were all like of not big value. Big Game Hunter, I mean, there's big in the name, but he's not big value in this match. The same goes for the Healbot and for the Mad Scientist.
Yeah, this Ysera is going to continue providing Daniel with resources that will give him additional value as the game progresses. So ElkY really needs to deal with it fairly quickly.
I don't think he can, though. Again, there's no real direct removal for the Ysera, and he has to generate 6 more damage from the hand to just kill it.
Right.
And a lot of times these decks, these Echo Mages, might not even run fireballs or other ways to directly remove it just damage-wise.
And we have seen him already play a copy of Polymorph. So if he has a 2nd one, that's really what he's looking for here. He could try and hide a Doomsayer behind a Sledge Belcher. Though we know that Daniel has that copy of Dream in his hand, which could make any taunt really unreliable.
Yeah, and then he had this dancing game of like, well, the board tension keeps building, but Doomsayer never gets to trigger, and therefore he might even answer it the moment you can secure it. ElkY gonna play a duplicate to hopefully force his opponent to attack into the Sludge Belcher and duplicate it, but then if Daniel sees that opportunity, he might dream and force a copy on something like a Mad Scientist. And Mad Scientist being duplicated is not what you want to say.
Not at all. Especially when you're so far into your deck that you've likely played all of your secrets.
Yeah, I mean, the Dream here is, of course, very strong now. I mean, especially if you can use it against Belchers. I mean, Ysera is simply drawing one big Ysera Dream card every turn. It's just so, yeah, it's just amazing if you have her on the board.
Yeah, the Shade continues to grow as well. Innervate, not what Daniel is looking for, but...
Probably the most useless draw you can have at the top of his deck. But he sees the Dream, and that's not going to make ElkY happy at all. Whatever Daniel kills next will duplicate, whether Big Game Hunter or Mad Scientist.
It looks like he may be attacking into the Big Game Hunter first. Does give ElkY 2 more copies of Big Game Hunter. Not much big game in his deck, however, so not much for him to do.
Unless he uproots this, there's nothing really
Let's
you can
see
target it.
I don't care that you just duplicated Big Game Hunters. I want it uprooted.
That would be for the ultimate BM. I would love that. ElkY, by the way, in danger of just dying next turn. Not only does Daniel have the potential lethal with whatever he draws, but he has that Nightmare as additional bonus damage.
And the cheap thing that Daniel was talking about in a previous game off the top of the deck for ElkY, not really so effective against a board full of large minions.
Not at all. ElkY needed some Frost Novas, something to stall. I mean, he will be staying alive essentially by playing another anti-Keelbot and a Sludge Belcher.
He can stay alive, but he's not really making any headway toward actually being in a winning position in this game.
True.
Daniel did pick up an Emerald Drake off of Ysera last turn, which not match up well against those two big game hunters, but
Yeah.
it's not looking like he's going to need too many more Dream cards to close this one out.
He might just need raw damage and a target for Nightmares to be received, and then he can just end the game right there.
I believe ElkY does have the Ice Block most likely as his remaining secret. So if Daniel does sort of go all in with Nightmare here, it could end poorly for him. But even then, I feel like he's going to have some large threats left over. Wild Growth, that's gonna find him a new one.
That's right. Wild Growth will draw him an additional card, even though there's already maxed out of mana crystals. That's the way you can use it late game. And he picks up Silence. Drew the Claw is helpful to help him clear the Doomsayer efficiently, so he doesn't have to use too many resources. But I guess he could still do that and play Emerald Drake and Drew the Claw sometimes because he has Innervate.
Yeah, he could just use his hero power and the Shades to clear the 7 health from the Doomsayer. So the end will not, in fact, be coming. He could also choose to charge the Druid of the Claw, but he has the Innervate, so he could go to the full 10 mana here if he really wanted to. Not really anything to do with all of that, though.
I mean, we were laughing at the two BGHs when we saw them, but as a matter of fact, the one BGH will target the 7/7 Shade, and the other BGH will target the Emerald Drake, so they will have their use.
Oh, wow. Daniel chooses not to kill the Doomsayer, just pushes damage to face, cracks the Ice Block, and it looks like he was hoping that was something else, some other secret, but...
So he thought he may have had lethal.
Oh, but he may just next turn anyway.
Yeah, Ysera Awakens is 5 direct damage to everybody that's not named
But
Ysera.
ElkY has the heal bot. ElkY goes back up to 9. You see, a roll of his eyes from Daniel.
No worries, because I have a feeling Daniel could still just draw lethal off the top. Just needs anything that does 3 damage.
And
The Ice Block was
is Swipe.
Swipe is
That
enough.
is it. Ysera Awakens, 5 damage, clear the board, swipe to ElkY's face, and Daniel Negreanu is going to win our show match.
Oh, ElkY is crushed. He says, no! You were the one that's supposed to wear Neutron cosplay, not me.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what ElkY's Sludge Belcher costume ends up looking like. That's a really